So to give an immediate response to what Keith has said. David, perhaps you'd like to kick off, please.
Thanks, Bill. I'm David Simon. I'm here as a Vice President of the World Union of Olympic Cities. I have the honor of representing the City of Los Angeles in the World Union. LA is a two-time host, and in 2028 we'll join London and Paris as a three-time host of the Games. The mission of the World Union, well, the World Union, as the name implies, is an association of the world's cities, approximately 50 of them, which have hosted either the Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games, or the Youth Olympic Games. We meet once a year. The association was founded about a decade ago. And the mission is to encourage dialogue among the world's Olympic cities so we can learn from each other's legacies and programs. And by posting that dialogue and results of it on our website at olympiccities.org, affect other cities around the world. And we also maintain links on our website to an inventory of the legacy of each of the world's Olympic cities. It's not yet 100% complete, but it's getting close to that. And in terms of TAFISA, we actually do not spend as much time as we probably should when we get together as the world's Olympic cities talking about sport for all. And that's not because it's not important, but I think it's because it's only since about the 1990s that bidding for the Olympics was incorporating sport for all. Before that, the Olympics was in a different space, and I think it was considered challenging enough for a city to simply host the Games successfully without worrying about a planned legacy and other aspects. So if you think about it, a majority of the world's Olympic cities stage the Games without any reference to sport for all. It just wasn't part of the thinking before the 1990s. Recent Games, it's been different. So for example, London for 2012 had as part of its stated mission wanting to use the Games to encourage increased physical activity among the kids and young people. And Beijing is going to be hosting the Winter Games in 2022, and one of their goals is to use the Games to encourage millions of their citizens to become skiers, where they're not now. So those are going to be interesting things to evaluate, but it also means that those of us who hosted the Games previously didn't have that. So I think TAFISA can help us to focus on that in the future because we all benefit from hearing about sport for all, whether it's part of our initial planning or not.
David, that's a great intro, thank you. Any quick comments on what Keith contributed in his address?
Well, I was just delighted that the president he quoted was Harry Truman. I'll leave it at that.
Wolfgang.
I'm Wolfgang Baumann from Germany. I am serving as Secretary General of TAFISA, which is a international sport association. I'm graced also to sit on the IOC Commission of Sport and Active Society, and I'm elected Vice President of ICSPER, which is the International Council of Sport Science and Physical Education. TAFISA is the organizer of this congress altogether with the Olympic cities. And right now we have more than 350 member organizations from all over the world. We are representing some 185 countries. And we have a very mixed and variety of members from all over the world. This includes national Olympic committees, just as cities and sport federations, but also universities and private people. We are a non-for-profit organization registered according to German tax law in Germany. And Liverpool actually means a lot to us. I have to admit we are owing them a lot, and so far, since at the beginning of the century, Active City was a sort of buzzword for us. It was big to talking about it, but nobody really meant and understood what it was all about. But then we had this sort of experience with the city of Liverpool that gave us all this background information, what it really means to talk about a place that is considered to be an active city. And it was just by coincidence, and since then we have this long-standing, very traditional relationship with the city of Liverpool, and the experience of the city of Liverpool, or taking the experience of the city of Liverpool for also our work, helped us a great deal, for example, to come up with this active city project that we are doing all together with the IOC. So we have a very emotional, I should say, even relationship with the city of Liverpool.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Felicity.
you very much. My name is Marika Felicite. I come from Eorld, Rwanda. I am the Vice President of the Rwanda National and Sports Olympic Committee, and I'm an IOC member and also a member of the IOC Sports and Active Society Commission. So my pleasure to be here is that the IOC is in support with TAFISA. Now, they have been in cooperation for a very long time, and they are recognized by the IOC. And as he mentioned, they sit on the IOC Sport and Active Commission, which is very important to make sure that sports participates for everyone at whatever age. Everybody needs to do sports. And this commission used to be called Sports for All, and now it has changed to Sport and Active Society, so that we may use sports for social change, which is very important because people need to live healthy, and as long as we are healthy, then we have a healthy nation. So we are happy to be part of TAFISA, and I think we are going to do great things ahead to make sure that Sports for All has gone beyond our expectations. About our dear brother from Liverpool, I think my main concern is that they are doing very good work, but we need to put more effort in creating of awareness. People are not aware of all these things we are talking about. They are not aware of the power of sport to change people's lives and also to raise the self-esteem. So we need to put much effort in creating awareness so that at least everybody must believe that she has the power to live longer by doing physical activities. It was believed long that all people, aging people, should not participate in sports. This is the right time to raise a campaign of awareness so that we may know that sport for all is for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicity. Keiko?
My name is Keiko Homa from Tokyo in Japan. Thank you very much for having me here today. Japan Sports Council, JSC, covers broad area of sports from grassroots to high performance. In that organization, my responsibility is to analyze sports policies around the world, focused community sports. I think the city of Liverpool, the initiatives are one of the best examples, best practices, I think. And as Keith's presentation, he showed many evidence, and I think evidence is very important. And also, we should focus on city, the environment. To increase sports and physical activities, we are focusing on individual behavior, but that's not enough. We should focus on city, the environment. That's very important in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keiko. And Michael, certainly some parallels between Liverpool and Rotterdam, I guess, but tell us who you are first.
Yeah, my name is Michael Beckers. I'm the director of the Department for Sport, Culture and Education of the city of Rotterdam. I first want to react on your speech, because there was one word that really struck me. That was the word diabetes. It was only for 9 months ago, it was January this year. I had a lot of complainings physically. I was 103 kilos heavy. Much more heavy than now. And I went to a hospital. A lot of people in my family said, you have to go to a hospital. So I went to a hospital and they examined me and they said, you have diabetes. So that really brought me to thinking about my life. What kind of life I was living. Shouldn't I change my life? The way I go to work, less sports, things like that. In the same month, in January, I got a new job, and that's the job I have now. So I have the position to do something for people who maybe have the same disease as I have, or maybe people who don't know, like I didn't know, that they live a life that's not so healthy as they could have lived. So that's first. I live and work in the city of Rotterdam, and the city of Rotterdam wants now and in the future to invite their citizens to move more. They want that their citizens enjoy moving, and also we hope that the power of sport will give us more achievements to on other goals in the social policies, like healthy, as what we talked about, like employability, economics, a lot of reasons we have. And last, I want to say that sports and its events in the city gives a lot of people proudness because they live in Rotterdam and they're very proud of it. And we work very good together with the city of Amsterdam to have a good program of national and international events in both cities.
Thank you, Michael, and a particular thanks for sharing your own personal experience. I'm sure you're not alone here in the room, but it means a lot that you can share that with us and that we all sense that. The challenge is not just at a macro level, but at a human level too. So you've now met the panel, and let me go back to David and Wolfgang, because this is a historic coming together of your two organisations, and I know TAFISA has come a long way since 1993 in Geneva. So tell us what your expectations of this coming together is at an organisational level. Wolfgang first, then David.
Maybe I start first, since it gives me the opportunity to reflect indeed on the year 1993. I had a very emotional moment of time this very morning. Unfortunately not on the staircase, but in the elevator, level 17. What happened to me? I came across the keynote speaker of the 1993 World Congress in Chiba. And I would like Joma Sabula to stand up. I think he's somewhere over there, because he was the one who had the position of steward of today. Why I'm saying this? At that time, a handful of federations met in Chiba, 20 countries, for example. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is physical activity, whether it's good for health or for integration, it was like a myth. It was not really proven. And there were just a few sport federations that were starting to work in this field. I'm not talking about universities. So it was a brand new topic, even in the year 1993. And I have to admit, at that time, Finland, it was like a pilgrimage country. Everybody was moving to Finland because somehow they had come across some secrets that the rest of the world were not aware of. But if I look now and connect with 2019, and I look into the audience, and I see the faces of a diversity and variety of participants, universities, cities, sport federations, ministries. This makes me proud and happy, because answering your question, if you ask me what do we have achieved since 1993, there is now a movement behind. We have managed to come up with a common language that these different areas of society can talk with each other when it comes to health promotion through physical activity and sport for all, for example. So 30 years doesn't mean a lot in the history of mankind, but I would say 30 years in the history of health promotion through sport for all is a very important time.
And David, what are you expecting practically out of the merger of these two agendas, these two organisations? What are we going to see from it?
Well, of course, we're only starting the conversation, so I'm not sure my crystal ball goes that far into the future, but I'd certainly like to see us at next year's meeting have a discussion about sport for all. And I do think that the Olympic Games is uniquely positioned. If you think about the staging events, I think the Olympic Games is uniquely positioned to influence the general publics around the world compared to other events which tend to be single sport events. So as much as I enjoyed the Rugby World Cup, when I look at those rugby guys and I look at myself in the mirror, I'm not the least bit interested in playing rugby. No offense to those of you who are rugby players. On the other hand, the Olympics, depending on what aspect of it you're interested in, might influence you, and especially might influence kids, to take up gymnastics, or to take up swimming, or to take up running, or to take up weightlifting, or whatever it might be. I think has perhaps not been fully taken advantage of is how to use the staging of the games to reach that worldwide audience with that particular message. And I think that might warrant some discussion at our annual meeting next year.
Thank you, David. So I think, Felicity, what I'm hearing so far from Wolfgang and David is that at their level, this is a growing movement. There are more and more organisations, sectors becoming part of the movement. Clearly, the IOC, Active Society Commission, is part of that. What's its contribution to the agenda that you've heard about? I think you're on. Yeah.
The agenda is to promote the Olympics, the whole world, and then also to follow the Olympic movement. That was the most important thing about that, and to make sure that at least we cooperate with the competent public or private organization who can at least put sport at the service of humanity, and also to make sure that there is peace in the world.
So, in a sense, as David was saying, that the Olympic cities have a part to play, you're the connection with this agenda into the rest of the Olympic movement and the IOC itself through the Commission.
Yeah, we are together with them because we are working together to make sure we reach the agenda of 2020 of the Olympic movement. So we use these smart cities of whatever they have achieved to make sure we attract other cities to learn from those who have achieved during the Olympic Games, organizations. So we are working hand in hand to make sure that we reach the top of our objectives.
And of course you wear other important hats back in Rwanda. So can you tell us in a sense whether the same agenda, whether the same movement is taking shape and having an impact in Rwanda?
It's really having an impact in Rwanda. What I can say is that now we are using sport for all to unite us. As you know that Rwanda was through genocide because of differences, but now we're trying to unite through sport. With that, we have at least 2 weeks having a car-free day, whereby all cars are stopped, and then people join the car-free day. Everybody participates in physical activities. And then with the government policy, there is a policy that every Friday, the civil society work morning hours, and in the afternoon, everybody must go to participate in sports, so that we may have that oneness, that unity, and also leisure and recreation for everyone. We also have developed sport for women who are pregnant, which is something that is unique, whereby they feel they get this fun and they are in recreation. And also, we also engage people who are already aged. They have their own group of doing sports. So it has really proved to change people's lives. People have come together, and people have been healed of trauma and depression using sports. So sports is just not, as people used to think before, that sports is for rich people, people have enough time. That's what the belief was there before. But now the mindset have changed. Even there is also gender balance. Women are participating, so we have realized that there is a very great importance. Sport for all is a necessity, and we are seeing the country changing because of using sport for everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Felicity. Keiko, we know from everything we've heard in our discussions that Tokyo is already one of the smartest cities in the world. We know you're mounting so many of the world's major sports festivals, so you're conscious of the impact of big events. But we also know that Japan is not immune from some of the challenges that the rest of the world faces. So how important in Japan at a national level is this agenda of bringing together the smart cities and the broader Sport for All TAFISA agenda?
I think collaboration is a main issue because in Japan, organizations were traditionally vertically segmented. The issues were treated separately, but we now face physical inactivity issue. It's very difficult to solve such kind of issue with only single sector or single field. So collaboration is necessary, I think. And the government also think collaboration as important So, for example, Japan Sports Agency created action plan for increasing sports participation. In that action plan, Japan Sports Agency emphasized the importance of collaboration. That's one thing. And also, Japanese government reviewed the concept of what is sports. Then they expanded the concept by including physical activity. So now sports is promoted as part of daily life. Because we have new sports policy towards Tokyo Olympics, and this policy is 5-year sports policy from 2017 to 2022, and we have 3 big sporting events during the period, and we think utilizing such kind of mega sports event to increase sports participation and also physical activity participation.
Thank you, Keiko. I mean, you've demonstrated where you emphasize the vital importance of collaboration, but we know that collaboration involves many, many different stakeholders. Do you find bringing together all those stakeholders is complex, or is it a mixture of opportunities and complexities?
Yes, it is very complex, but we have to collaborate by involving many sectors. Otherwise, we can't address the issue, physical inactivity issue. So it is necessary, I think. And the stakeholders involved policymakers, academics, public organizations, NGOs, NPOs, and also private companies in those sectors, I think. So we have to think about, we have to create, or if I borrow Keith's word, we have to build the bridge between sectors.
Absolutely, and the list you mentioned there is already complex. Michael, tell us who are the players in Rotterdam? Who are the people you have to bring to the table, all those different groups, to make something work, to make something happen?
Yeah, I can tell you a very difficult story, but I won't do that. So I'll make it simple. I think there are only 3-4 very important partners in our city. First of all, we have a sort of public company. We subsidize it as a city who owns all the facilities. So they build the swimming pools, the sport activity centers, etc. That's a very big partner where we work with. The other partner is sport support. It helps clubs, schools, people in the neighborhood to approach individual residents in our city, to approach clubs, to get a better performance, to activate people in Rotterdam. And the third party, who is also here, is Rotterdam Topsport. Because we know the importance of good organized national and international events. We have to have a good event agenda. It motivates people in our city when we have a world championship gymnastics. You can see the year after it, the people, the children who are part of a gymnastics club is rising, and that's for years it's rising, so that's very good. But like some other speakers here said, collaboration is the key word. I give you one example. We see, as Keith mentioned before, a lot of young boys in the age 5 till 15, 16, who are doing nothing. They are sitting on a chair, they have this little thing in their hand, watching a television, and they're playing with a PlayStation. I think all over the world, millions of guys of that age are playing their PlayStation. And in Rotterdam we had an idea, we sign a contract with university, with the companies who are involved in this industry, with the users, the boys themselves, and us as a government. And we are trying to get those boys moving again. Is there a way we can, as you mentioned before, we can stay with their interest in playing the PlayStation, but well, maybe you can play the PlayStation and move as well. And well, we are trying. We are hoping that we can adjust our own programs, adjust the programs of the sport clubs. We are inviting them to come with good ideas, and we will share it with a lot of people. Hopefully, it will change those youngsters. It will help those youngsters.
Thank you, Michael. Well, time now to open up the debate. As I've said, I think we have some questions that have already come in on the Slido. But before I go to that, would anybody like to raise their hand and add a comment or an experience from your own city or your own organisation, or a question for any of the panellists? Yes. In the middle here, if we can have a microphone, I think it's to Chantal. Right in the middle. There's a microphone dashing its way. Around the back there, here we are. Chantal, tell us who you are, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Chantal Buxer. I'm working for the International Olympic Committee under the leadership of our Sport and Active Society Commission member. But previously to working at the IOC, I was working in Washington, D.C. at a Cycling for All group where the political will wasn't always fully present for the work we were doing. So the question I have to the panel is, I think the collaborative models of Liverpool and LA and Rotterdam are fantastic, but would you have any recommendations for maybe some first steps or easy wins that a city can take if the budget is limited, if the political will is not necessarily there? What would be a way to start this sort of work to hope to then influence the rest of the city to come on board? Thank you.
Great question, Chantal. I'll come to some other questions in a moment. Let me just, I won't ask everybody to answer, otherwise we won't have time, but as a city representative, maybe you've encountered the same sort of situation, Michael.
I think the first simple answer is start with a sort of winning coalition. Start with a group of people where there is the energy to change anything. And I think that will be the users, the people in your city, and try to organize them and give them a voice. And once you have done that, it won't cost you any money. You go to talk with the politicians and show them that there are people in there living in their city who want to change something. So maybe this is helpful.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, there's a question here, and then I'll take a second question, which is directly behind, and then we'll see if we can answer them together. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, my name is Sarjit Singh. I'm from Malaysia. I'm the Deputy President of the Malaysian Sports for All Association, and also Vice President of ASFA, and I was associated with TAFISA for a long time. If you realize there are urban and rural areas around the world, we all know that, and whatever is being preached is health is important for everyone, whether urban or rural. Some of the problems that we NGOs face is finance. It's very difficult to get funds from large corporations and companies because they all go towards high performance sports. They want to be with the winner, which is very natural. I was just, perhaps I could channel this question to the IOC member, Madam Wilmarka. You have got an organization called the IOC Sports and Active Society Commission. I still feel very strongly that perhaps the Olympic Council, which was formed because of Sports for All, would be able to consider getting these large corporations to also pay towards Sports for All. Not necessarily on an international level, but around the world.
That's a good and clear question. I'll give Felicity a couple of minutes to think about that before she answers by taking another question or comment, and then I'll come back to you, Felicity.
I am Sudhi Sharma from Delhi, India. I am General Secretary of All India Association of Sports for All. I just want to take Sajid Singh's point a step ahead. There is a corporate social responsibility. In India, we have, maybe it is in other countries also, but this Olympic movement should consider it that every corporate who earns some profit, in India we have 2% of that they have to spend on corporate social responsibility. It includes education, it includes health. It has also started including sports, because sports is indirectly connected to health as well as education. So I request, why does this is introduced in all the countries, maybe 2%, 3% or 1%, so that it is distributed amongst low sports which are not attracting this big corporates. And every company, in every country there is a, according to GDP ratio, you will find enough of funds for that. So my suggestion is that at IOC level it should be taken care of.
Thank you. I'm glad we took the two together. And in fact, this is a broader question than simply the IOC, I think. So let me start, in fact, with Wolfgang and then come to Felicity, because I think the point here is there any way in which we can engage business, the commercial sector, even more than they are now, through perhaps a policy that was suggested in India, or any other, to play a greater part?
There is indeed, and for that reason I'm also very happy to have the City of Liverpool with us, because what they did from the very beginning, they included the university, just to make sure that right from the very beginning there was strong evidence that the work and also the money the city itself invested in this field of active city was well invested. And I believe, and I know it at least from my home country, that if we want to have commercial business, the industry, also get into this and help with the budget, then we have to inform them and let them know that it is well invested money. It's not just going to the drain, it's really helping to increase the number of active citizens. And that's why I so much support the approach in Liverpool, that right from the very beginning, with the baseline research and so on, an academic partner comes into the field and supports the city council or whatever to do the job.
Evidence-based response to the commercial sector to make them respond. Thank you. Good point. Felicity?
Thank you. That's a very good question. What I know is that normally finances is very difficult. So in your organizations and whatever, you need to have a very good marketing strategy so that you may raise funds for your activities. For the Cities&Sport Commission, we always have a grant of $200,000 a year, whereby we put outside people to apply for the grants, and then people are given this money for Sports for All. So you need to know that, because it is just put on the website so that everyone can apply and get funding to support your activities.
That's great news. Thank you, Felicity. I'm going to go quickly to Slido and see whether there are any questions on there. We don't have very much time, but if we can switch to Slido, please, and just see. Okay, we have got some questions here. Will Liverpool be able to share good practice? I'll come to you at the end, Keith, and perhaps you can answer that question. What's key to fostering successful collaboration? I'm going to ask David that one. And then another question for Felicity. In your opinion, what's the most effective way of creating awareness? Maybe you've already touched on that one, but David, perhaps you can give us your thoughts on what's key to fostering successful collaboration.
Well, of course, the first question is collaboration among which groups? I'll assume for purposes of the question that we're talking about the collaboration between the public and the private sectors.
Okay.
Because that's what, in Los Angeles terms, I don't want to speak for other Olympic cities, but that's what it would come down to. And I think you have to, it's two sides of the same coin. You have to use your powers of persuasion to hopefully convince the elected officials that this is a cause that they should embrace. And just as was said about the private companies and their willingness to invest, you have to persuade them as well, that because that's where the funds are going to come from. It's unlikely in our context that the government will provide funds for it, even though that would seem, I know, counterintuitive to some of you, but in Los Angeles that would be the norm. They would expect the private sector to come up with the funding, even if the public sector would be the ones waving the flag, so to speak.
Wolfgang, let me ask the same question to you, in fact, and relate that question about collaboration to the two organisations that are collaborating today for the first time. The question was, how do you make that collaboration most effective? What are you going to do to make the collaboration between the two organisations work really well?
I guess, and some of you are aware, first of all tonight we are going to sign this memorandum of understanding, that we have a political groundwork where we can work from. What we are doing right now is indeed identifying and selecting all these good examples from the Olympic cities, because the majority of them, also as part of their legacy, do have quite some interesting experience and good projects. And for us as an organization like TAFISA, it is basically also to find a way to share these good experiences and examples with other cities. We have a special network for this. It's just in the process to be established, and we see ourselves more like a vehicle, like a mediator, to let other interested communities know what are the good examples and experiences from other cities. And in particular, cities like Los Angeles or Rotterdam and so on that we are aware of can offer a great deal of information to those that are maybe a little bit left behind. And last but not least, I think this is also very important to note, we are aware, and for that reason we need this experience from our most recent research work in Europe, that up to 75% of city leaders, mayors, lord mayors, and so on, are not aware of the significance of promoting sport for all and physical activity in their city, also for example to reduce disease expenses and so on. So there's still a long way also to go in sort of awareness building and education. For that we need those leading cities.
Thank you, Wolfgang, and more on that later, of course, when we talk about the Memorandum of Understanding. Felicity, just a brief answer if you would, because we've run out of time.
Creation of awareness is just having a strategy. We need to, sometimes you can organize a sport event and write a theme, like let's fight poverty, let's fight obesity, and that one will work out. The next thing is to use the media. If you use the media, things will go very fast, and then use the Olympic medalists to give their testimonies, what they have done through sports, how much they have achieved, so that at least they may attract the whole wide of people to know that with their testimonies there is an impact using sport for improving their lives. Thank you.
Great practical suggestions. Thank you very much, Felicity. Now, Keith, you stimulated our conversation to start with, so effectively I'm going to give you the last word by summing up, please, including dealing with the question about Liverpool.
Yes. The first thing, anybody who knows anything about anybody from Liverpool is that we will talk to anybody. So, are we prepared to share our good practice? Of course we are. We've tried to do that through a number of different forum and organisations for the last 15 years, but we're more than happy to share what we've done. And as you'll see tomorrow, I'm going to share some examples of stuff that hasn't worked. And that's actually quite important as well. Whenever you're in this sort of field and you're in this sort of area of interest, what I would say in terms of summary is that it's difficult and complex. You know, there's no simplicity here. There's no golden bullet, silver bullet, whatever. You know, people talk about exercise as medicine, and you know, it's simple, get everybody exercising. It really is complicated. It really is complicated. So I'd say two things about that. One is we've got to understand the complexity, and the one thing that I really loved was in Stuart's talk, the map of what was related to obesity. You know, it is complex and it's difficult, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to engage all of the facets and groups and interested parties. And you only do that by communicating. And sometimes the communication is difficult, sometimes the communication process hits, you know, a dead end, but you've just got to keep trying it. And in Liverpool, here's the interesting thing. We recognise that in a sport for all sort of city, we wanted to engage with our football clubs. We tried and we tried and we tried and we tried with Liverpool Football Club, and it took us forever
to get Liverpool Football Club on board. Now they're doing some really great stuff. So that communication, collaboration was really difficult. Everton was an open door. It was like, how can we help? What can we do? Who can we liaise with? Who can we bring to the party? You know, when you engage with somebody like Everton, and you then go, right, what can you bring? They go, well, you know, on our board of directors, we've got whoever owns, you know, Land Rover site and this company and that company, and you suddenly go, oh gosh, right, we're connecting all over the place when you deal with some of those individuals. So it is complex, it is difficult, but if you can strike up the right sort of communication, doors will open up all over the place. But let me finish with one statement, and that is, I wasn't expecting Michael to say what he said today, but I actually think that we should celebrate a lot more some of those individual personal stories that are not about elite sport winning gold medals, but about somebody making substantial changes to their life. Because, you know, there are many more Michaels in the audience than there are Olympic gold medalists.
That's a great final comment. Thank you very much indeed, Keith. I too was struck on the one hand by the complexity, the challenges, the number of different organisations it takes to achieve things, but also, exactly as you said, by on the one hand the individual achievements that we've heard about from Michael and others, and on the other hand, as Wolfgang said, how far you have already come in 30 years from small interested groups to now being a movement. And when you become a movement, and now a movement added to by the Smart Cities and Sport, all sorts of things start to become possible. With that, apologies we're a few minutes late, but lunch is now available. It's on level 6. I hope you'll enjoy it, and please try and be back. I know we've tightened things a little, but we need to restart our afternoon by 1:30, please. 1:30 for the